Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Amar bin Salim and welcome to the very first session of Out Loud with Amar. Those of you who have been watching my videos know that I always try to come up with content that adds value to the lives of my listeners. And today it's not going to be any different. It's rather going to be very, very comprehensive and insightful. Now, for the past couple of days, I have noticed that the entire country seems to be moving in circles. We are all moving in the same discussion, the same rut, and that is the newly introduced single national curriculum, SNC. Now, there are many debates going on social media. I've come across multiple podcasts, then television debates, then so many articles being written in newspapers and magazines, and all of them are talking about the SNC. The people discuss, some of the people say that it is going to be a menace for us. It is actually going to take back the country to the stone ages. On the other hand, there are people who argue that no, this is a way to reduce the class differentiation in the society, which actually exists, and there is something. We should definitely try to reduce that. But for this debate, we are trying to understand and maintain a position of neutrality. We'll try to explore in a very objective manner as to what SNC really is. And then we'll also talk about the consequences of this change. The good thing is that I am not going to be your only speaker for today's session. We have Dr. Kusro Dubash, and we are very thankful to you, Dr. Dubash, for joining us today. Dr.
Pleasure.
Dubash is not just a resource person for the Higher Education Commission Punjab. He's presently working at Lempro Milan, one of the leading EdTech organizations in the country, as their director for HR and training. And previously, Dr. Dubash worked at FC College University as their executive vice rector in intermediate. And he was also acting as the department head for the Department of Education. He's worked for Lahore American Schools and many other organizations. Of course, nobody can do justice to your profile, to your introduction, Dr. Dubash. So before we move on to the minute details of today's topic, Dr. Bash, I would want you to start with this main question. What does it mean to have a single national curriculum? What is a national curriculum?
Okay, I think before we even go into the single national curriculum, the important thing to understand is curriculum is one piece of the education puzzle. If we just focus on the curriculum, we will be limited in our approach and what we can do with education. With curriculum, I think we need to focus on developing textbooks, training teachers, and improving our assessment and examination systems. All those are equally important, and put together, I think we can have a good education system. Having a single national curriculum, and even the revised 2006 curriculum was the national curriculum. But how it's implemented, how it is enforced, what role does the government and the private sector play in developing and implementing these are equally important. So to me, having a national curriculum, single national curriculum, is the basis for equality in education. But does it guarantee equity in education? And I think it does not. Unless we focus on the textbooks and training the teachers who teach in private schools, teachers who teach in the so-called elite English medium schools, teachers who teach in the government schools, teachers who teach in the Urdu medium schools. How do you expect equity? Are all those teachers teaching the same way, with the same passion, with the same enthusiasm? So it gives you equality, but it does not in any way guarantee equity. So to presume that the single national curriculum will bridge the gap, will bridge the divide, is, I think, a far-fetched cry right now. Working on it and focusing on it and developing the other three areas at the same time, I think, is equally important. The same problem I saw when the 2006 curriculum was implemented. Textbooks were developed in a hurry, and they were not complete. They did not do justice to the curriculum, and teachers were not trained. And so the equity issues remained, and it will still remain with the single national curriculum unless somebody really focuses on training these millions of teachers who I personally strongly believe that our teachers have no issue with content. With the bachelor's or master's degrees that they have, they know the physics, the math, the bio, the history, the Urdu, everything. But what do they know about teaching that? Just for an example, Newton's laws of motion are taught in science in the elementary grades, 5. They are taught in middle school in grade 8. They are taught in metric, and they are taught in intermediate. Would you teach it the same way? Would you use the same approach? Would you use the same examples? I hope not. But how does the teacher know that? Who has trained the teacher? Who has told the teacher how you teach, to what depth you teach something at grade 5, at grade 8, in metric, and at intermediate?
Okay, so what I really gather, Dr. Bash, is कि सिर्फ करिकुलम बनाने से या मिनिमम स्टैंडर्ड्स को रख देने से सबके सामने ये नहीं इंश्योर होगा कि माशरे के अंदर इक्विटी भी होगी, क्योंकि जो पूरा उसका जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है जो रिक्वायर्ड है, स्पेशली इन टर्म्स ऑफ टीचर्स, जो कि टीचर ट्रेनिंग दैट इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एलिमेंट इनटू द इक्वेशन, वो मिसिंग है. एंड मेरा अगला क्वेश्चन भी आपसे यही होने वाला था कि डू यू थिंक, एंड लेट्स आई मीन कीप द टियर 1 schools aside, tier 2 and tier 3 private schools and then the government schools, do you think कि उनके पास जो teachers मौजूद हैं, उनकी teacher training, is that even possible at such a huge level, Dr. Dubash, where there are like thousands and maybe lakhs and lakhs of teachers who are working over there? Do you think it's even possible?
I think it is possible. It's not easy, but I think if somebody seriously wants to do it, and you cannot seat 3,000 teachers in a room and bark and bite at them. That is not teacher training. Okay, you need to do it in small groups, and I think a good model that HEC and PHEC to a far extent follow is train the trainer. So you get 35, 40 trainers and send them back to cascade the same training. They use the same material. They will use the same PowerPoint, the same handouts, the same activities, but they will cascade the training. When they are there, they can do it in bunches of 40, once, twice, thrice, 10 times over a month, for example. And I think that's a model that the government or whoever takes up this training venture will need to follow. Yes, the government cannot provide first-hand training to all these millions of teachers that need it. But training the trainer and then cascading the training is what needs to be done. So yes, I think it is absolutely possible.
It is possible, but it's possible in phases, of course. That's what I understand, and that's what I do. तो फिर डॉक्टर दुबाश, आपको क्या लगता है कि पहले सिंगल नेशनल करिकुलम आ जाना चाहिए था या पहले हमें ये पूरा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप कर लेना चाहिए था?
I think, and I even said this when I was talking about all this in 2006 when we were working on the national curriculum then, that we unfortunately started wrong. If we started changing our examination system, our teaching methods, our textbooks, our curriculum would automatically change. So I think we are putting the cart before the horse. When we start with the curriculum, try to get the textbooks out, and then try to train some teachers, few teachers, and then the examination system is still the same. So it doesn't really give that impact. So yes, and that's why I think all four need to be done simultaneously.
Simultaneously, okay.
Yes, they have to go side by side. They have to be parallel.
Okay. Dr. Ramash, I've had the opportunity to speak with numerous parents who send their kids to generally to tier 1 schools for O levels, for A levels, for international baccalaureate programs. अब उसमें एक बहुत बड़ी confusion ये आ रही है कि for example, जैसे इस दफा implement कर भी दिया है government ने कि social studies and science both are two different subjects. उनको क्लब करके एक जनरल नॉलेज का वाकफियात आमा का एक सब्जेक्ट बना लिया गया. अब इससे जब आप ये सब्जेक्ट को उर्दू में पढ़ेंगे और इसके बाद एकदम से साइंस विद 4th grades onwards, it's going to be in English. and then social studies is going to stay in Urdu till grade 5, and grade 5th के बाद फिर से इंग्लिश में. डोंट यू थिंक कि जिस बच्चे ने ओ लेवल्स करना है या उसके बाद उसने IB के MYP प्रोग्राम में एंटर होना है या किसी और स्ट्रीम में एंटर होना है, डोंट यू थिंक इट्स गोइंग टू actually confuse that child कि मैंने आखिर पढ़ना क्या, उसकी अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग किस किस्म की होगी?
Yeah, I think the issue here really is how serious are we? Now, I remember when I was going to school and in grade 5, it was 1966 in Karachi. The Sindh government decided to do everything in Urdu except English, of course. So math, science, geography, everything was in Urdu. It was a pain, but when I went to grade 6, they reverted back to English. They couldn't handle, you see, when you do something in a hurry, without planning, without thinking, then this is what happens. And so I see that even right now, if we do this, I think we disadvantage our own bachas by our policies. An Urdu medium kid who does intermediate in Urdu medium, what does he do in a medical college, in an engineering university, in higher education? Where are our professional institutions in Urdu? So a student who does very well in Urdu medium intermediate is a failure, is a flop, because it's too late to learn English and deal with the English, professional English language in a medical college or engineering university and other higher education places. So I think we have to stop disadvantaging our own students. I think what the government should have done is given the option to the schools to choose whether they wanted to teach science or social studies or whatever in English or in Urdu. You see, we have not given due place to our national language in education or anywhere. I mean, which country in the world has a national language that's different from the official language? We stand at the top of that.
But do you think that this was the way to do it? कि आप मतलब अपने बच्चों को उर्दू के अलावा भी आप बाकी सब्जेक्ट में भी डाल दो जो कि पहले इंग्लिश में और बाद में भी उन्होंने उसको इंग्लिश में ही पढ़ना है, but now you are actually kind of forcing it on them कि यार अभी आप you just become a confused nation.
Yeah, no, I think it will just lead to more confusion. I think what they should have done, if the government really wanted to improve the English skills of the government school bachas, and that's where the bulk of our student population is, maybe for the first 3 years, they should just do an immersion English program with them and then bring in the subjects in English. Because see, 74 years we've been independent. I mean, it's a long time. How many governments have come and gone? How many governments have experimented and tried? And how many bachas have been ruined in the process?
Of course. Now, Rubash, Urdu से related एक और मेरा question ये है कि with a huge focus on teaching subjects in Urdu, is Pakistan headed forward or backwards in the international arena? And let me put this whole thing in a context over here. We understand that Urdu is not a very widely spoken language. And Pakistan, in terms of economy, Pakistan, in terms of its political influence, is not a country that enjoys a very strong position, unlike China and Japan, जिनकी शायद अपनी जुबान का फोकस जो है वहाँ पे शायद ज़्यादा होगा और इसलिए शायद हमारी गवर्नमेंट जो है ना, I'm not taking any names over here, लेकिन वो कहते हैं कि जी क्योंकि ये ममालिक इन्होंने तरक्की की अपनी ज़बान के बेसिस पे तो शायद पाकिस्तान भी करेगा. But what we really fail to understand is कि they are exporting countries, ठीक है, इनकी वैल्यू है दुनिया में.
Also,
अब अगर पाकिस्तान फॉर एग्जांपल कुछ इंट्रोड्यूस कराता है, डोंट यू थिंक कि पहले ही हमारी रेपुटेशन वो नहीं, पहले वी आर नॉट देयर वेयर वी शुड हैव बीन, और अगर हम वहां पे लैंग्वेज बैरियर भी क्रिएट कर देते हैं तो जो दुनिया का इन्फ्लक्स हमारे पाकिस्तान में होना था, इट्स गोइंग टू फर्दर आइसोलेट द कंट्री.
Okay. Well, I think we need to understand the fact that, like China and Japan that you named, and then, of course, look at Korea, look at France, look at other countries, they have used their language from the start. We are thinking 74 years down the line. If we had started focusing on Urdu in 1947, maybe we would have been where Japan and Korea and China are today as well. So today, I think it's a little too late, because if we start now, as I said, Okay, this is only up to intermediate. What about then the professional colleges, higher education? What about all the vocational education that some students also need? Everybody doesn't get into an academic setting. So why are we continuing? I think I still say if we would give 2 years at least of English immersion to our government school children with proper English teachers, I think it will help in the long run.
Okay, okay, look, okay, Dr. Bash, अब एक तरह से different तरीके से भी इस discussion को analyze करने की कोशिश करते हैं. So we understand that there are multiple private schools. I have worked for a couple of them. We
Yeah.
are working in the private sector. You have worked for numerous of them. अब private schools के लिए, do you think it poses a threat that there is a single national curriculum? And why do I say that? So I guess single national curriculum private schools में भी है, or private or government schools के अंदर भी single national curriculum है. So that means that practically the student who goes to government school and the student who goes to a private school, they're all learning the same thing. So why would a parent would
I'm
travel?
not sure they are learning the same thing. It again comes to equality and equity. Okay, because if you look at the curriculum and if you look at some of the textbooks that have come out, it is still very heavily focused on information, content, and knowledge. Where are the skills? 21st century bachas need skills. Content, information, they will find on their own, on their smartphones. It's at the click of buttons. Okay, and so if even today we still are going to be talking about, rote learning, learn by heart, all that nonsense. Because what is this learn by heart? I think the science is wrong. How can you learn by heart? The heart is not the organ for learning or memorizing. It's the brain. But we never ask the student, bhai apna dimag use karo, use your own head. The heart is the organ for romance. Wo karne do inko. Let them romance, but learn by heart.
I was going to ask that while we're at it, what's heart for?
It's the wrong science. Tell the student, apna dimag use karo. Use your own head. Try this on your own. Then hum classes mein kya? How many students are able to question teachers? Hardly.
Not many, I'm sure.
Hardly. So if the child is not questioning, the child is not thinking. And if the child is not thinking, the child's brain is closed. It's not functioning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dr. Bash, I came across a couple of discussions with the ones, I mean, I didn't discuss it, but I was actually hearing a couple of podcasts where those who introduced the national curriculum, who were behind it, they were saying कि हमने ऐसा क्या किया, हमने तो सिर्फ उसके अंदर we have just established the minimum standards, and minimum standards should be there across the country. They should be the same, but you have this liberty to go beyond that. Don't you agree कि single national curriculum का एक ये benefit है, because right now there are multiple streams existing. So there are madrasas, there are private schools, and then there are government schools. और अगर हर बंदा अपना अपना कुछ पढ़ा रहा है, तो we won't be able to maintain this standard. Or at least can say कि एक बच्चा जो मदरसे में है उसने ये complete कर लिया होगा by year 1.
I think the thing to look at is, why say minimum standards? ये 21वीं सदी है, for God's sake. Nothing minimum is sufficient enough. Why the minimum? Why set the minimum standards? Why not raise the benchmark? Why not make it higher? What is this minimum standard? Comparatively to what? I think what needs to be done is somebody needs to do a research looking at the standards or the SLOs in the single national curriculum versus what the private schools are doing, and see how disparate they are, and understand the gap. You see, we can't fill the gap in 1 year. Or if a child in grade 1 today, where is the guarantee that this will continue for the next 10 years? If it doesn't,
guarantee that
the child is lost. You see, that's why, we haven't got continuity in education. And that is a big disadvantage to our education system. We need continuity. We need to make sure that people start something and they finish it. If you
Mhm.
don't finish it, you'll never have a longitudinal research study to fall back on.
Okay,
And
of course.
you see, and 2006, and this is 21, right? So it has taken us a good 15 some years to revise, change the curriculum. In the real world, curriculum are revised every year, or at the most every 3 years. That's how current they are. And where is coding in the single national curriculum? These kids are not going to work on Shakespeare. These kids are not going to work on all these other things. Where is coding? Why don't we teach the skills the child will need in his future? Are we preparing through the single national curriculum? Are we preparing our students for their 2035? Not our 2035, their 2035. And the answer is no, because the skills are missing, computer IT stuff is missing, coding is missing, and
Mhm.
all that is what is going to make sure that students benefit in the long run. You know, we must understand that people who develop this curriculum and people who will teach this curriculum are all products of the 20th century. The bachas in our classroom are products of the 21st. The bachas won't change. They should not change. We have to change. We have to meet the students' needs of their 21st century life in the future.
Of course, totally get your point, Dr. Bash. Dr. Bash, I was going through the curriculum and general knowledge के जो curriculum है उसमें page number 7 पे there's this very beautiful extract that I have over here. It says, keeping in view recommendations from different stakeholders, the government has taken the historic decision to introduce Islamiyat for Muslim students and religious education subject and religious education for minorities as separate subjects from grade 1 onwards. अच्छा, अब मेरा इसके अंदर क्वेश्चन ये है कि जितना मैंने करिकुलम को पढ़ा, देयर लाइक 5 मेन रिलीजन्स इनके बारे में बात की जा रही है, ठीक है? सो देयर इज सिखिज्म, देयर इज क्रिश्चियनिटी, हिंदुइज्म, probably Judaism, other religions as well. Do you think कि गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स तो इस वक्त बात भी नहीं करते, हम टीयर 2 स्कूल्स की भी बात नहीं करते, इवन टीयर 1 स्कूल्स में, do you think we have enough trained qualified मैन पावर जो कि इन सब्जेक्ट्स को इक्वली मतलब अटेंशन दे सकते हैं? क्योंकि फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैं अपनी बात करूं तो मैं शायद इस्लामियत जिस पैशन से पढ़ा सकूं, हो सकता है मैं क्रिश्चियनिटी या कोई और चीज ऐसे उस पैशन से ना पढ़ा सकूं. So
True.
what should be done over there? I mean, I'm totally with this idea.
I
This looks
think,
like a beautiful concept. And मतलब
yeah,
हमारे
I
मास्टर्स में इसकी जरूरत भी है.
Yeah, I think instead of doing different religions or instead of doing even comparative religions, I think it's too early. A class one child won't understand comparative religion. I think we'll just confuse them more. I think as an alternative, they should have done something like ethics. Like when I went to school in Karachi, we did civics. My children going to school years after I went had no such thing. And I think that civics that we studied helped us become better human beings, better citizens, helped us understand our role in a diversified world. So I think you have to look at the appropriateness of a concept or a subject at the age level, at the developmental level of the child. And comparative religion or introducing 5 different religions and confusing the child is not right. And I agree with you, you cannot have one single teacher teach this as a subject at the school level. At a university level, after the adult has gone through a degree in comparative religion and so on, I might understand, yes. But I think it is too early in grade 1 to start something like that. Doing something like ethics or civics would be a better option.
Of course, that makes sense. Bilkul. Dr. Bash, finally, I understand that we wanted to do a very short podcast, so I have kept the number of questions limited over here.
Mhm.
But finally, we don't you think that we have introduced the SNC at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty going around in the country? कि कभी हमें किसी हफ्ते में पता है कि जी स्कूल्स खुले हुए हैं, कि अगले हफ्ते हमें पता ही नहीं कि स्कूल्स खुले रहेंगे या स्कूल्स बंद हो जाएंगे. So हमें एक रात पहले बेसिक प्रैक्टिकली पता चल रहा होता है कि जी हमें ट्वीट्स के थ्रू पता चलता है कि स्कूल्स
Right,
अगले हफ्ते छुट्टियां हैं या वी आर लर्निंग फ्रॉम
right.
फ्रॉम होम. अच्छा, उसके अंदर जहाँ पे टीयर 1 टीयर 2 या वैसे तमाम स्कूल्स के लिए यहाँ पे एक ये चैलेंज है कि उन्होंने उर्दू में कन्वर्ट करना है करिकुलम को, एंड दे आर लुकिंग फॉर टीचर्स हु आर मतलब वो गुड एट दैट. डोंट यू थिंक कि जो इवन इंग्लिश पढ़ाना एक मसला है इस टाइम के अंदर? डोंट यू थिंक दैट द
Yes.
गवर्नमेंट वाज इन अ हरी?
I mean, I have visited government schools in the past, and I have seen English teachers that are such a dismal story. I mean, if you don't know English yourself, what are you teaching? You know, मैं तो एक टीचर को कहा एक दफा, I asked her something and she just looked at my face and I said, Madam, if you aren't able to do this, how do you expect the bacha to do it? And even if the bacha does it, what are you correcting and checking? So, you know, there's an issue. So the issue again with this school open, school close, digital work, online work, this, that, okay. Having a device does not guarantee online education. ओके वही आता है कि चले गवर्नमेंट ने चले लैपटॉप्स दे दिए, फलाना दे दिया, धमकाना दे दिया, इतने टैबलेट्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर लिए, ओके इक्वालिटी हो गई. Equity कहाँ है? You see, we have to focus on digital usage. Digital usage. क्या इंटरनेट है, बैंडविड्थ है, बिजली है? Can it take the load of so many students in a particular area in class on in a digital classroom at the same time? So is there, we have to address the digital usage divide. They can like us. I mean, I have a laptop, I have a smartphone, I have an iPad. क्या मसला है मुझे? लेकिन those luxuries are not available to other students. So the digital usage divide is something that we will need to address before we actually say that we are going 100% digital or 100% online or this or that. Where are we guaranteeing all this? Where are these students going to be able to afford to pay for these services? Are these services available? Will they be free? अगर school में भी है तो क्या will the school be able to afford and provide the services for 100, 200 students at the same time? I mean, there's no sense doing online work where every 5 minutes you are cut off. You know, so I mean, digital divide and digital usage divide are two very different issues that will need to be addressed.
Of course. I think इसकी example बिल्कुल उस तरह से Dr. Dabash. I was listening to another discussion a couple of days back, and there was a panelist who said कि it looks like कि हमने जैसे घर के अंदर घर बनने के बाद LCD लगाते हैं ताकि घर अच्छा लगे. हमने LCD शायद पहले लगा दी. We're trying to build a home around it.
Yeah,
It probably is like that.
वही जैसे मैंने कहा ना, the curriculum and all that, curriculum being first with where are the textbooks, and I'm sorry, you can't write a good textbook in 2 months. You just
And I
can't.
think this is one of the biggest challenges that are being faced right now by all these schools. कि curriculum तो आ गया, but where are those books? Books जो government ने कभी NOCs दिए जा रहे हैं, अपनी books जो हैं वो print नहीं हो रही, and schools have no idea what to do.
I'll give you one example before we wind up of the textbook. When the 2006 curriculum की ये class 6 की I think science की book थी, chapter 5, we told the publisher कि just show us the sample of one chapter. Don't do the whole book, because if it's a mess, I mean, you'll have to do the whole thing again. So, and we said, you choose the chapter you want. हम ये भी नहीं कह रहे हैं कि पहला chapter ही करके लाओ. So he chose whatever chapter 5 or 6 it was, the senses. So it said chapter 6, the senses. And the first question in the chapter was, this is how the chapter opened. Have you seen an eye? Question mark. Now, when I looked at this, I didn't even read ahead. I stopped. Because I said, if a child is even if a teacher, a government school teacher is reading this, have you seen an eye? What response do the students give? What response does the teacher expect? So I called the publisher and I said, I sat with the lady and we, I asked him, I said, what response? कहते वो हमारा काम तो नहीं है ना, response वो तो classroom में होता है. I said, seriously? I mean, you're writing a textbook with, and you're putting this question. So I asked him, I said, okay, अगर मैं बच्चों से कहूँ yes, no कहूँ, so what do you think the students will answer? Have you seen an eye? Yes, 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 yes. I said, no, they are all wrong. You always see eyes. You never see an eye. वो pirates नहीं है, एक आंख के साथ फिर रहे हैं. You always see, आप animals देखे, fish देखे, birds देखे, जिस किसी living चीज को देखे, you always see eyes. You don't see an eye. How confusing for the बच्चा. And then he asked me, अच्छा सर आप क्या करते? मैंने कहा मैं ना 4-6 तस्वीरें लगाता, टाइगर की लगाता, जीब्रा की लगाता, हिरन की लगाता, शेर की लगाता, एंड सो ऑन. सिर्फ फेस. तो कहते सर इसमें क्या? मैंने कहा वो तस्वीर लगाता, लिखता मैं कुछ नहीं. नीचे टीचर गाइड में आता, ask the students what do they see, what is the difference in those 6 pictures, for example. Okay, and the response from the student should have been that some animals' face in the picture have eyes in the front and some have eyes on the sides. Now front में चले टाइगर का होगा, शेर का होगा, लेपर्ड का होगा, जीब्रा, हिरन, खरगोश का साइड पे होगा. भाई क्यों फर्क है ये? Because, and then not only are you teaching the sense of sight, you are teaching predators and prey. All the predators have their eyes in the front because they have to focus, they have to target the kill. The prey have eyes on the side because उन्होंने यहाँ वहाँ देखना है कहाँ से आ रहा है भाई कोई. But when the book came, it came, have you seen an eye?
So it didn't change.
No, because he just didn't understand. He thought, yeah, see, we don't have a textbook publishing industry as such. So people to write textbooks initially say, कितनी कापियां बनेगी? अच्छा 20,000 नहीं, इसमें तो हमें कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. कोई 2 बिलियन, कोई 10 मिलियन हो तो हम प्रिंट भी करें, फायदा भी हमें. But for God's sake, this is education. So you see, you have to develop the textbook publishing industry first in the country. Because education is a service. No matter what you do in education, it is a service. And that's what people need to understand.
Bilkul. Dr. Bash, before we go, I have this itch that I have to ask you. कि सारी retaliation जो है वो private school से क्यों आ रही? Government school से किसी से भी retaliation as such कोई नहीं आ रही. And is it like, I mean, the misery loves company? Is that happening over here?
No, I think the private schools are looking at a drop in standards or a drop in quality. They're looking at the benchmark being lowered. And if that's what they do, and eventually if the kid goes for A levels, it will not help the bacha, it will not help the system or the school. The government schools are not saying anything because I don't think they understand the change.
Okay.
You know, pehle bhi, the government said, this is the curriculum, this is the textbook, go and teach. And another thing I think that we need to understand is that a textbook is not a recipe to follow. Page 1 se page 200 tak. A textbook is like the menu card at a restaurant where you pick and choose what you want to teach, when you want to teach. By English, Urdu में मैं पहली कहानी पहले पढ़ाऊं या 8वीं कहानी पहले पढ़ाऊं, क्या फर्क पड़ना है बच्चों को? Yes, I think in English language, Urdu language and maths, जो cumulative subjects हैं, you have to follow a certain sequence. लेकिन हिस्ट्री में भाई मैं वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 पहले पढ़ाऊं या यूनाइटेड नेशंस पहले पढ़ाऊं, क्या फर्क पड़ना है? You see, I mean, that's what we need to understand. कि cover to cover textbook खत्म हो गई, शाबाश दे दी, बच्चे ने सीखा, कख नहीं होता.
वही ना, जैसे फोकस तो यही होता है ना कि यार इस टाइम के अंदर हमने अपना सिलेबस खत्म कर लेना है क्योंकि हमने उसके बाद एग्जाम लेना है.
And good, I'm glad you brought this up because another thing that one needs to ask is, at some point, somebody has to stop and ask, how much is too much? देखिए, a calendar year is 12 months. A scholastic year is never 12 months. It is 8
Probably half of
months.
that.
तो जब 12 महीने का आप सिलेबस क्यूरिकुलम बनाएंगे, तो व्हाट यू आर टेलिंग पीपल इज 1/3 तो आप पढ़ा ही नहीं सकोगे ना, कम अज कम.
तो इसका
सो
मतलब है कि अगर 1/3 आप पढ़ा ही नहीं सकते, तो जो आपने मिस किया, यू आर डेफिनेटली गोइंग टू मूव दैट और कैरी इट फॉरवर्ड टू द नेक्स्ट ईयर.
नो,
या
यू
इट जस्ट
कांट,
गोस
क्योंकि
देयर.
नेक्स्ट ईयर का अपना इसीलिए देयर इज द रश. द करिकुलम, यू नो, वो जल्दी जल्दी में becomes a hurriculum and a variculum. It doesn't remain a curriculum.
I am sure for parents it's a curriculum and a curriculum, as you have said.
It's a variculum and a hurriculum. I mean, April आता है, teachers are worried. We 3 कहानियां रह गई हैं, 4 कहानियां रह गई, 2 साइंस के चैप्टर्स रह गए, क्या करें, छेती 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 करो, and the hurriculum, variculum, curriculum तो गया.
Of course, bilkul, bilkul. Thank you so much, Dr. Dubash, for your presence today. I know you have a very tight schedule. Thank you so much for taking time out for
Pleasure.
us. And I am sure it's not just about the single national curriculum that we've talked about. We've also talked about what the classes, what the teachers should be like, what the schools should be doing right now, and where the gaps are existing at every different level in the society,
Yes.
in terms of education,
Yes.
in terms of curriculum, in terms of the way we deliver. And all of that has to improve. Again, जैसे आपने कहा कि पहले वो infrastructure या तो वो पहले बन जाए या फिर it goes simultaneously. ये नहीं हो सकता कि curriculum पहले आ जाए और बाकी चीजें बाद में. So once again, Dr. Bash, thank you so much for taking time out. Thanks a lot to our
Pleasure.
viewers for being with us today. And if I'm strongly going to recommend that you please follow us on our Facebook and on our YouTube handles as well, so that we could keep bringing the most updated information to you with regards to SNC and other social topics. So have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. See you. Bye.